I wake up before the sun most mornings now, not because I need to, not because I have somewhere to be. It's just what happens when you've lived long enough to silence to become familiar. I sit at the edge of my bed and listen. The house doesn't make much noise anymore. No footsteps, no distant radio, no one asking if I've eaten. I'm 90 years old, and there's a chair across the room that has been empty for decades, yet I still look at it every morning. That chair used to belong to my father. He never lived here, not really, but after he passed, I brought it home. I told myself it was practical, good wood, comfortable. The truth is, I couldn't stand the idea of it being used by someone else. Some things feel wrong when they move on without you. There's a moment that returns to me often. Not loudly, not dramatically, just quietly. I was 48 years old, tired, impatient, certain that life was waiting for me, not leaving me. I was driving home from work when my phone rang. It was my father. I saw his name on the screen, and I didn't answer. I told myself I'd call him back when I got home. I told myself I was exhausted. I told myself there was time. That call lasted maybe 10 seconds. The consequences lasted the rest of my life. Now at 90, regret doesn't arrive like pain anymore. It arrives like weight. It settles into your chest and doesn't move. People think regret is about big mistakes, ruined careers, broken marriages, but the regrets that stay with you are smaller than that. They're quiet, ordinary. They hide inside moments you barely noticed when they happened. I sit there some mornings, staring at that chair, thinking about how a life can change direction without ever raising its voice. When I was younger, I believed loss was something dramatic. I thought you'd feel it coming. I thought there would be warnings, signs, a sense of urgency. But most loss arrives politely. Back then, my life was full. I had a job that demanded my attention, deadlines, meetings, responsibilities that made me feel important. I wore being busy like a badge. My father had already slowed down by then. His voice on the phone was softer, his sentences shorter. He never complained. That was his way. He'd ask how work was going, if I was tired, if I was eating properly. I'd answer quickly, efficiently. I thought staying connected meant exchanging information. I didn't realize he wasn't calling for updates. He was calling to hear my voice. I visited him less as the years passed, not because I didn't care, because I assumed there would always be another visit. I thought presence was something you could reschedule. He never asked me to come more often, never said he was lonely. Some people don't ask for what they need. They wait to see if you notice, and I didn't. At the time, none of this felt like loss. It felt like adulthood. It felt responsible. It felt normal. I didn't know I was standing at the edge of something that would never come back. After my father passed, life didn't stop. That surprised me. The world kept moving at the same speed. I went back to work, paid bills, answered emails. Grief didn't knock me down. It followed me instead, quietly. At first, I missed him in obvious ways. Then, slowly, the missing changed shape. I'd hear something funny and reach for the phone. I'd see an old man crossing the street and feel my chest tighten. I'd sit in silence
and realized there was no one left who remembered me as a child. That's when regret began to take form, not as guilt, as recognition. I started remembering moments I hadn't thought mattered, the times I rushed conversations, the visits I shortened, the calls I delayed. Regret doesn't shout. It whispers, "You were there, but not really." I realized how often I had been physically present and emotionally elsewhere. How often I treated time like something unlimited. Regret is strange like that. It doesn't hurt all at once. It teaches you slowly, after it's too late to correct the lesson.
Years later, I was cleaning out old boxes, things you keep because throwing them away feels like betrayal. I found a notebook. Inside were short notes my father had written. Nothing profound. Reminders, phone numbers, dates. On one page, in handwriting that had begun to shake, was my name. Next to it, "Call him again tomorrow." There was no date after that. That was the moment I couldn't look away anymore. I sat on the floor and held that notebook for a long time. It wasn't the words that broke me, it was the effort behind them. He had been trying to reach me again. I had been meaning to call back again. That was when regret stopped being abstract. It became personal. It had a shape, and it had my name on it. After that day, memories began rearranging themselves. Moments I once labeled as insignificant took on weight. I saw how often I chose convenience over connection, how often I postponed presence. I realized I had lived much of my life preparing for later conversations, later visits, later honesty. Later never arrived. I saw that my father hadn't needed much, just attention, just time, things I believed I was saving. I wasn't unkind, I wasn't cruel, I was distracted, and distraction over a lifetime can cost you everything that mattered. The realization didn't arrive as wisdom, it arrived as sadness. Life isn't measured by what you build, it's measured by who felt you were there. Meaning isn't loud, it's quiet. It sits in ordinary moments we rush past. By the time I understood that, the person who taught me was already gone. Understanding came after the damage was done. That's the cruel part. You learn what matters only after you can no longer practice it fully.
I don't know who you haven't called. I don't know who you assume will always be there. I only know how easy it is to believe time is patient. It isn't. It doesn't warn you when it's about to take something permanent. If this story sits with you quietly, that's enough. Some stories aren't meant to instruct, they're meant to linger. I live with regret now, and meaning. They coexist. I answer my phone immediately these days, but the calls I needed to answer most are gone. At 90, you don't fix the past, you carry it, and sometimes carrying it carefully is the last form of love you're allowed.